Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is 6 o'clock here in the morning in Calgary, Alberta, and it's Thursday morning, June the 10th. I'm happy to be here. This is one child abuse survivor to another. I had a little bit of trouble getting into my into my switchboard and whatnot this morning, so hopefully I'm streaming and everything is going well. So, yeah, I'm glad to be here. This is a 30-minute live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com, and we're on for 30 minutes, and my chat room is open. If anybody wants to go sit in there, that's great. I'm just waking up, having a coffee, and getting my notes together, and I wanted to continue talking about the coping list that I found on Michael C. Irving's website. That's Irving Studios, www.irvingstudios.com. And that you can also find it on the Child Abuse Survivor Monument website, Child Abuse Monument. So if you type in Child Abuse Monument, it'll bring you to the site, and then you can look. It's got all kinds of resources for survivors of child abuse, right? And there's adult coping lists, and that's where I found these coping lists, and just looking around on his website. It's a great website, and I hope everybody will check it out. It is so worth checking out. Let me tell you, not too many people have done a child abuse survivor monument. And this guy, Michael C. Irving, he's a psychotherapist, he's a sculptor, and he's also a survivor of child abuse. So he's really, his whole life is to help people to heal from the trauma of child abuse. And I just really appreciate people like that because, not only does he have a huge gift of being able to sculpt, and he's an artist, but he's also a psychotherapist, and he helps people. And I really give this guy, a lot of credit and a big thanks, because that is so awesome to be able to give back, after growing up abused, and to be able to give back and help people, so that they can recover and that they can move on to have a healthy, happy life, just like everyone else has, and deserves to have, right? So it's just so awesome, and I hope you will check it out. We're looking at these coping lists because they're so good. They're good for people. It doesn't matter whether you've been abused or not. There's a lot of people. Everyone in life experiences some stress because, and issues come up. Life is full of all kinds of events that can cause people to just not be able to cope. Whether it could be a health-related issue, it could be job loss, could be death in the family. It could be anything like that. It could be just a lack of no friends, no support. Excuse me. So, so many people could benefit from these coping lists. People that, have post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, they can, they often talk about coping lists and using coping lists. So it's really important. I think everybody should find ways to learn how to cope. Because that's the whole issue with child abuse, really. That most parents who abuse their children just can't cope, and that's why they do what they do to their children. Because they're out of control, and when you're out of control, you can't do things properly. You can't live your life properly. I know, I spent years like that. And so, you have to be able to gain your focus back and ground yourself, in a crisis situation. So that's why I think these lists are so important. And we've already gone through quite a lot of the material, but I want to continue on looking at it because it is so good. Every time I read it myself, it helps me out, because it reminds me of all this stuff that really I could do if I find myself in a crisis, and how to relax, and how to, on a daily basis, take care of myself, and how to, get through the day if I'm having a tough day, right? Which, we all have hard days, every single person on the planet. I don't think you can possibly come away unscathed, there's every single person on this earth has experienced some sort of bad day, and it really makes a difference in how you handle it, because at the end of the day, really all you can really control is what you will do. You can't control what's going on in the world, and you can't control what other people are doing, and you can't control a lot of times what's going on in your life, but the only thing we can control what we do to ourselves, and we also can control how we feel about things. These are all within our reach, to control what we do and how we handle things. And I think that's the important thing to remember is you can't control life, and you can't control other people for sure, or events from happening, because things are going to happen, and you never know what's going to come at you. You know what I mean? And so in this world, right? And so as long as we can control how we're going to handle it, we put ourselves in a better place to be able to survive it, first of all, get through it, and then, not have it affect us so badly, right? And especially if we have these coping lists, right? Because it really shows you how to get your focus back, how to be grounded, and how to set up boundaries, and all kinds of stuff. As if you're a survivor of child abuse, the chances are with no boundaries, when that's abuse is all about breaking the boundaries and tearing down barriers, And so people don't often learn how to set boundaries. What's acceptable in their life, what's not acceptable, how you're going to let people treat you, and how you will treat other people. You know what I mean? This sort of thing is not, when you're growing up in an abusive home, there's really no such thing as setting boundaries, and you know what I mean. You just, because as a child you really have no control, but as a person, as an adult, later on we do have control over what we do, and that's about the only thing we can control. So that's why I really like these coping lists. It gives us some good ideas on how to stay grounded if you're in a crisis. I had a few weeks ago had something happen that really could have just sent me for a loop, you know what I mean? And just like everybody else, I know people who are going through some horrible things right now. And it's, with under focus and remaining calm and just breathing and getting through the day and realizing that I can't control very much what's going on out around me, but I can control how I view it, how I see it, and how it's going to affect me, by remaining calm and learning how to cope. Now, years ago, I don't think I would have been able to do that because I had a lot of anger management, had a lot of anger issues. I grew up in a violent home, and the anger was breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You know what I mean? That's what we grew up with. That's how I handled everything. If something happened and I didn't like it, and of course, my whole day I would spend the whole, maybe not even just the day, it could be weeks or months, angry about the situation, and which caused me a lot of, stress for my body, right, and stress for other people around me, and that's the whole issue, right? I decided there's got to be a better way to handle things, you know what I mean? And so you start looking around, and there really is, and it's important to follow this stuff, not just read it, but to actually put it into place in our lives, right? So I want to continue on with that, and I'm not a professional therapist or counselor. I just want everybody to know that I'm just a student, really, is what I'm doing. I'm in between courses at MRU here in Calgary. Can't afford to go back to take the courses, but I will, and eventually get back in there. But I had to stop going because I couldn't afford to go. But excuse me, I'm still studying all the time, and so I'm really just a student, and I'm also a survivor. So that's why I just want to get information out to people that I can, as much information as I can out to people while I'm doing these blog talk shows, right? Because I had no idea when I first started, how long I'd be doing them. I'm not sure if I'm even streaming, to be honest with you. I have some strange stuff going on Skype here this morning, but I'm just going to keep talking just in case. It does say that I'm still streaming, but I definitely have a strange thing going on in the background. But anyway, won't worry about that. If it's not streaming, I'll just have to redo the show tomorrow. So grounding through breathing, we're going to keep going. It says here, for a moment, focus only on your breath. Pay attention to breathing in and out. Breathe evenly and calmly, feeling your lungs expand with oxygen when you inhale and deflate when you exhale, right? This helps us to slow our breathing down calmly, right? Place your hand on your abdominal area and feel your stomach expand outward when you inhale. Imagine breathing the freshness of nature. Each time you inhale, say a calming statement to yourself such as, I am breathing in calm air, I am safe, I am inhaling calm air, and I am exhaling anxiety, toxins, the pain. And so this is things that we can do, right, when we're feeling that we just can't breathe, we can't focus, if something comes up that's so stressful and causes us to not be able to breathe. These are things that we can do to help get our breathing under control. And now that is so important, right? If you've ever experienced a crisis or something that's happened, in your life that was just absolutely horrendous, you know how it can cause people to not be able to breathe, right? And I know I've had that happen many, many times, and it's awful. It's very uncomfortable and it's scary. So that's why if we can learn how to breathe, and inhale, exhale, breathe, you know what I mean? It's very important because the oxygen levels come back, and you get your body to calm down a bit, you know what I mean? It says, each time you exhale, breathe out, say a number to yourself, and then count 10 exhalations, and so on, in groups of 10 if needed. Breathe in white light or use other imagery you find calming. And while breathing, imagine or use pleasing aromas. So, you could have some incense or some nice, what do they call it, like candles or whatever, scented candles going. And it's kind of like a relaxation technique, and more almost like a meditation type thing that people can do to help themselves relax and calm down. I wish my parents would have known how to do this stuff. I think their lives would have been so much better if they would have just stopped and breathed and did some relaxation and meditation, because they were so, not that type of people. They were very angry and miserable all the time, right? So they never sat down to relax, never stopped fighting long enough to breathe and catch their breath and just relax, right? So that's a huge problem for a lot of people, and it's a bad way to grow up around people like that. So, if you're doing that around your children, you really shouldn't be doing that. It does affect them, and it will affect them, and it's a bad way to grow up around parents who can't cope, you know what I mean? So I hope all parents will get out there and get some information regarding how to cope, because that'll stop a lot of abuse, and you'll be happier, the kids will be happier, everybody will be happier. Because life will throw things at you, man. I don't know one person who's been unscathed by life. Life will tear you down, and if you don't learn how to stand up against it, you know what I mean, and not let it affect you like that, you'll just go down with it. And I've seen so many people do it. It's unfortunate that these people just couldn't cope, you know what I mean? Because I've lost a lot of friends due to the fact that they couldn't cope. And that's just horrible. It's just something as simple as really being honest with yourself. We have to be really honest with ourselves and sit down and say, what's wrong in my life? I can fix this. It's going to have to be me to do it. Nobody else can do it. Nobody else is even going to do it, even if they could. And so, they've all got their own set of troubles, you know what I mean? So that's the whole issue. We have to do it ourselves, and we can have a good and decent life. We don't have to live this a stupid, horrible life, you know what I mean? I saw so many people living stupid, horrible lives. It's just unreal. And, today, who knows where they are? They're probably in prison or dead or whatever, you know what I mean? And that's no way to live, man. It's just not. Especially when you grow up in that situation. You really deserve to have a good life, whatever that good life represents to you. Going after your dreams and really, going after what you feel you should have been doing in your life, Excuse me, my voice is just terrible this morning. So that's just the whole issue, we have, the only thing that we can control is ourselves, really. And that's what a lot of people don't stop and think about. You don't have very much control over what you do, what life throws at you, but except for what you do to yourself, and how you handle things and how you choose to live this life. And that's what I discovered a while back. I thought, it's really up to me what kind of life I want to have. And my parents obviously didn't put me on the right road, and so it's going to be up to me to change the path. I'm going to have to get off that stupid road that they put me on and get on to my own road and get my own path going and live my life to the best that I can. And I thought about it. I thought, there's no one else going to be able to do that for me. It will have to be me to do it, which means getting seriously honest with yourself and spending some time to do it. I mean, I had lots of time on my hands, My sweetheart moved out. He was terminally ill, and we split, and we separated about 4 years ago. And it just gave me a lot of time to sit and think, It gave me a lot of time, personal time to really focus on reality and what was really going on in my life and what I needed to change. And I'm still working on some of it, you know what I mean? That's the whole issue. It's not something that you can just do in a year and then it's just over, or 6 months, right? There's no time frame for this kind of stuff. And it just happens it has to happen at its own pace, right? So every person really has to work through all this stuff at their own pace and what's comfortable for them. Some people, just need to go at a slower pace, and some people are more than happy to just run headlong, going crazy to get it done. But whatever works for you, that's the best way to go. I've read that in lots and lots of websites out there for survivors of child abuse, and or any kind of abuse, domestic violence and whatnot, sexual assault. Everybody has to heal at their own pace, and you have to be in charge of your own healing. That's for sure. Otherwise, it's not your own healing. You don't own it. If somebody else does the work for you, how are you going to own that, right? It won't be yours. It'll be somebody else's. You have to do it, and it has to be your own healing. So we have to be very proactive and really on top of our own healing, right? So that's why it's so important. I absolutely love these coping lists. So you can go to that website, www.irvingstudios.com, and /child_abuse_survivor_monument /copinglists.htm. If you just bring up the child abuse monument, just type that into your browser, it'll bring you there, and then you can look around. But there's some great information there for survivors of child abuse, and I love that website. It's a great website. So we'll continue on here. It says, having, maintaining, and managing boundaries is a normal and often spontaneous human activity that survivors of abuse can have difficulty with. Boundaries are about your relationship with distance, time, space, emotions, and thoughts. Having conscious boundaries is being able to know and decide when, where, and with whom you merge. It is also being able to determine and vary the degree of limits you establish. Not being able to stand up for yourself, say no, or refuse to give over something that you don't want to, all are boundary issues, right? So if you can't say no, or refuse to give over something you don't want to, or not able to stand up for yourself, those would be boundary issues, right? That's some examples. It says abuse destroys boundaries. This is so important for people to know. During child abuse, boundaries are totally ignored, violated, and shattered. To survive abuse, you had to disassociate from any sense of boundary. As the deadening response to abuse became habitual, you missed out on developing the inner sense of boundaries. You did not pick up the lessons that healthy role models in your world displayed. Part of the healing and coping process for survivors of abuse is to reconnect with the inner sense of boundary. And to learn ways to give yourself boundaries and let others know what your boundaries are is a difficult but vital task. And so that's just the whole issue, right? If you didn't have, growing up in an abusive home as a child, as an abused child, chances are the role models in that world were not good, right? And that's just the whole issue. They couldn't cope, and that's why they were abusing their children. So the whole issue is they probably didn't show any kind of proper boundaries or really teach their children anything, right? Except for how to maybe hate and how to be angry and how to hurt other people later on in life. So that's the whole issue, right? It's really bad. That's why we have to do this stuff. We have to, like I was talking yesterday, we have to become our self-nurturers. We have to become our own teachers. Just as our parents would have taught us all this stuff, and we should have been able to pick it up from our parents or caregivers. If you have parents that just couldn't do it for whatever reason, maybe they were abused as children, or they just didn't, maybe they just couldn't cope, or they had some mental issues, right? Which is quite often the case. Then, of course, you need to learn how to do this later on in life, right? Because that's the whole issue, right? We have to learn this stuff. So, that's why I like this stuff, because I didn't get any of this stuff when I was growing up. So it's very helpful for me to go through this stuff, because it just shows me, oh, yeah, okay, it's sort of like I probably heard of it before, but didn't really understand the whole thing. And it sort of helps me set my own boundaries, right? Which I've already done. But the thing is it's a good idea to keep going over it. Because if it's not something that you learned as a child, it's something learned later on as an adult, and then it takes longer to put it into place. It takes longer to actually have it be like second nature, like learning how to say no, right? That's a big issue, right? Especially if you grow up in an abusive home and you're not allowed to say no, and you'd be in trouble if you say no, or if you don't just give in all the time, or whatever the issue was in the home. You don't have a voice really as an abused child in many times, and so that's the whole issue. So you grow up like that, and then you become an adult, and you can't say no, and you can't protect yourself. Obviously, right? Nobody's taught you how to say no or protect yourself, so it's absolutely horrible. Then what happens is people end up lashing out, either in very violent ways and end up hurting people, or they end up hurting themselves. You know what I mean? This is just really, really ridiculous. And that's why it's so important for people to get help. I really do, really promote professional therapy and counseling. I have never had any, but that's because I haven't been able to afford to go. But if I ever do have some extra money, I'm gonna seriously consider picking up a counselor or a therapist. Probably need a counselor more than anything, and then they'd be able to tell me whether I really need therapy or not. You know what I mean? So that's the whole issue. I might just consult a counselor, someone who deals with adult survivors of child abuse, because it would be very good to know. They would probably be able to point out things that I'm doing to myself to self-sabotage that I don't even realize that I'm doing. Because when you grow up abused, you're not being taught properly how to look after yourself and how to get along in this world. If you have one or two parents who actually are healthy parents, and they know how to live life, you know what I mean, how to get the most out of life and how to help their children, then you would get that information through them. You know what I mean, and as role models, right? But when your parents don't, and you basically spend your adult life trying to help your parents because they are still not able to function, right? They couldn't function when you were a child, and then they still can't function when they're an adult. I mean, it's very, very hard, right? Because you're trying to become the parent then, right? And yet you don't have any of those skills because you weren't taught any of those skills, right? So that's the whole issue, and it's absolutely horrible, right? So that's why it's so important to get the information and get some help. If you're a survivor out there who's there is group support, even if you don't trust the therapist or counselor. I have checked out the group support stuff, and I really like it because these people are survivors just like me and you, and they want to heal too, and they're pretty they're there for you because they know what it's like to be in pain. They know what it's like to suffer from child abuse, right? So they're always there trying to be very, very reassuring. They have lots of resources that they usually know about that they can offer to as just something you can try. You know what I mean? They have they've been there. So it's really nice to have somebody to talk to who has been there, right? Because they understand what you're going through, or at least similarly, I mean, not everybody experiences the same thing, and that's the whole issue, right? But, they know what it's like to be in pain and to suffer as a child at the hands of somebody else. So it's really a good way to get some help, group therapy. I really like that. And there's online group support, and that's what I'm talking about. And so you don't have to go anywhere, and you don't even have to give anybody your real name. And you can just the people that own the site. I mean, generally the creator of the site you would have to give your name there, but the rest of the group doesn't need to know your real name. You can keep it anonymous, and that way, if you're concerned about people finding out that about the abuse that you suffered, you can keep it very anonymous so that nobody knows it's you, and you can still talk to people and get some help. I think it's just so awesome, right? So we're going to continue on here. It says, identifying boundaries. It says, to have good boundaries, you have to identify them and think about what they are. Physical distance, emotions, time, space, and thoughts. So physical distance refers to the space that you have around yourself and others, for example, being too close or too far away. Emotions, having difficulty with emotional boundaries means not being able to distinguish between your feelings and others' feelings, or merging with someone's emotional energy. That's my problem. I have a lot of emotional difficulties. Whatever's going on around me, that's what I'm feeling. You know what I mean? I'm actually learning now because I'm starting to recognize it. Not to do that, not to take on other people's emotions and feelings, right? But I know that I did that for so many years. It caused me a lot of problems. It caused me to quit my jobs. It caused me to yell at my bosses and curse people out, and it was hard to not do that, because at home that's what I was doing just to get through. Really, I was trying to side with my mom, who was my main abuser, so I would have to get into her world every day to try to see how I could stop her from abusing me. So I was always aware of how she was feeling, what she was going through, and she was just quite often dumping all of her problems and sob stories on her children. Instead of going to get some professional help, she was trying to use her children almost as therapists, right? And little kids cannot help in that area, you know what I mean? And so, we grew up always being affected by our parents' emotions, and so there was a lot of emotional disturbance there. They were both emotionally disturbed. They were mentally ill, right? And so, as an adult, it's so incredibly hard not to do that, to take on the same. It's something that I learned how to do from a very young age. So probably a baby, I started doing that. So, I grew up like that. So it was a real trip to find out, later on that I was doing that. I had no idea I was even doing it. I had somebody point it out to me, that I was actually taking on everyone else's emotions around me, and that that was just way too much of my responsibility, that I just didn't need to be doing that. You know what I mean? It's like you don't have to take on the world's emotions. You just there's ways to handle this stuff, and emerging with someone's emotional energy. I was always doing that because I was very much on the lookout at home, for problems and abuse and whatnot, domestic violence and whatnot. So that's the whole issue. It's you pick up on this emotional energy, especially this very negative energy coming from the parents, right, or the caregivers, and it really does throw kids for a snowball, because they feel everything, right, that the parents are feeling, right, and the anger, right, if the parents are angry people, then the children will feel that, right. If the parents are depressed all the time, the children will pick that up. If the parents are not able to cope, the kids won't be able to cope, right? Because that's who they're looking up to teach them, see. And time is another one. Problems with boundaries over time means not distinguishing between present, past, and future. It is feeling yesterday's traumas as occurring in the here and now, or being absorbed in the dread of fear that something terrible is going to happen. And I spent years like that, you know what I mean, just because there was always some disaster going on, some crisis in our home, just breakfast was a crisis at our house, you know what I mean, like, lunch was a crisis, it was just, everything was a crisis, so it was just a huge problem, every day was a crisis for my parents, right. Excuse me, my voice is just really bad this morning, but I think I'm catching a little bit of a cold. I sat under an air conditioner yesterday all day with no jacket. It was just so frozen. I was just frozen all day at work. So yeah, it's just the whole issue, right? A lot of times people have a hard time with that, and if you've suffered trauma, a lot of people with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, from any traumatic event, doesn't even have to be child abuse. It could be, something that just happened in your life, a health issue or a car accident, anything that caused you to your body to react and to deal with something that was very traumatic on your body and on your mind and on your whole psyche, and that can cause a lot of problems. So, lots of people, war veterans, plane crash survivors, I mean, anybody who's been through a traumatic experience, right, might have these problems with time boundaries, right, because all these things will come and haunt them from the past, you know what I mean, and then they feel yesterday's traumas as occurring like in the here and now. So I kind of understand that, like with flashbacks and whatnot, and or being absorbed in the dread or fear that something will happen, something terrible will happen again, and that's something that if you're a child and you grow up in an abusive home, that's just normal. I mean, something bad's going to happen. You know what I mean? Something bad is going to happen. And, if you grow up and you're stuck in a home that's abusive, something bad's going to happen just about every day. And you're just sitting there at school waiting for something bad to happen when you get home from school. That's what I spent my whole entire youth like that. And because something bad was always happening at our house. And so I just developed this fear, this natural fear. Now, as soon as I got older and, then I didn't have so much of that problem, right? It was just growing up in that home as a child. Well, I have about a minute left. Wow, that's crazy. I just chatted away the whole show here. But anyway, we'll continue on with this. I hope you can go check this out yourself. www.irvingstudios.com/child _abuse_survivor_monument /containment. That's the next portion. Containment.htm Hotmail. Yeah, check this out. This is such good information here. Absolutely awesome. And I hope you have a great day. I'll be on, back on tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock a.m. for One Child Abuse Survivor to Another. And I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. I hope you will go check out our website at www.dreamcatchersforabused.children.com. Great information on there. It's updated like hourly. I'm telling you, that website is probably one of the most current, up-to-date websites in the world. I know this because I can vouch for it, because I know it's updated like pretty much hourly whenever stuff is coming in, information's coming in. So you want to check that out. And Dreamcatchers Talk Radio on Blog Talk Radio. That's 10 o'clock tonight, and host Elizabeth Roberts-Brawley, the Southern Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. She'll be on there tonight, 10 o'clock p.m. I'll be in the chat room, and she's going to have a great show lined up. I hope you will check it out. So take care, everybody. Have yourselves a really good day. Make sure that you do hold on to that hope. It's so important. Reach out to someone if you're having a hard time. coping. Everybody has a hard time coping at some time in their life. And just as long as you're not suffering in silence, that's the whole issue, right? Suffering on your own. There is help out there, and there's people that do care. So have a great day, everybody. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.